You ever see an American thing and think, yeah, this is good, but what if it was Japanese? Well, that's why we're here today. This time, The Wizard of Oz. Yellow Brick Road, The Wicked Witch, Kansas. I'm going to assume you're familiar. To my surprise, it's actually pretty well known in Japan, and was especially popular in the 1980s. Oz started all the way back in 1900 with L. Frank Baum's book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. It was an easy-to-follow children's book, though a little darker than the 1939 film may have you think. Let's see. He seized his axe, which he had made very sharp, and as the leader of the wolves came on, the Tin Woodman swung his arm and chopped the wolf's head from its body, so that it immediately died. As soon as he could raise his axe, another wolf came up, and he also fell under the sharp edge of the Tin Woodman's weapon. There were 40 wolves, and 40 times a wolf was killed, so that at last they all lay dead in a heap before the woodman. Okay. The King Crow flew at the Scarecrow, who caught it by the head and twisted its neck until it died. And then another crow flew at him, and the Scarecrow twisted its neck also. There were 40 crows, and 40 times a Scarecrow twisted its neck, until at last they were all lying dead beside him. Why wasn't this in the movie? This sounds awesome. Anyways, the book was of course brought to Japan at some point as Osuno Mahotsukai. The earliest Japanese translation I can find is from Boys and Girls of World Literature, Volume 13, Uncle Ashinaga, The Wizard of Oz, and The Voyage of Dr. Dolittle from 1967. It is very possible that there are earlier translations though, as there are a whole 67 years between the original English release and this one. Of course, there are many different translations nowadays, and the books have been adapted into a bunch of picture books and stuff. The sequels have also been translated. Then we have the famous 1939 film The Wizard of Oz, which kind of missed the point of the original book, but is still a classic in its own right. This movie has 3 different Japanese dubs. The first was from TBS in 1974, then we have the NHK version from 1987, and finally, in 1990, a brand new dub was made for the home video release. The 1990 version is currently viewable on Nico Nico Doga for free, with great comments like, Judy Garland, 16 years old at this time, already quite a bitch. What? What did she do? She's just singing Over the Rainbow. Speaking of Over the Rainbow, the song took on a life of its own in Japan, just as it did in the rest of the world. Many Japanese artists have covered the song, both in English and in Japanese. My personal favorite is the cover by Yuzo Kayama. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. It was also one of the Chiba Rote Marine's fight songs until 2009. Was rearranged for the arcade game Rainbow Islands, and was used in the 2015 anime movie The Anthem of the Heart. There was also a 2004 J-drama titled Over the Rainbow, where the main character is inspired by The Wizard of Oz and inspires to become an actress. Anyways, back to the movies. All major Oz movies after 1939 have received Japanese dubs as well. 1985's Return to Oz has a couple different dubs too, one for the theatrical release and another for the Fuji TV release. But now on to what we're actually here for, the Japanese adaptations of The Wizard of Oz. First we have the 1982 Wizard of Oz OVA by Toei Animation. This one goes by really fast and is only around 9 minutes long. As a result, it feels very rushed. It's basically just a quick summary of the original. I do like the art style though, very 80s. In terms of audio, well, the music is alright, and it has an English dub, which sounds like, well, a 1980s English anime dub.
That must be the Emerald Castle belonging to the Wizard of Oz.
As it's so short, there's not much to say about it, so let's move on. Then we have the 1982 Toho movie titled, get this, The Wizard of Oz. This one looks like a weird combination of old western cartoons and 80s anime. Anyways, as with the previous anime, you can watch this with the original Japanese audio or with the English dub.
Now would you please tell me what all of you are doing here? You what?
They even redid the songs in English. I prefer the original Japanese for that though. Oh yeah, this anime has its own original songs, just like the 1939 movie. The soundtrack for this movie is actually pretty good. In terms of story, this adaptation is slightly more faithful than the 39 movie, as this time there is the murdering of animals. By the way, this clip is totally unedited. Overall, this is a pretty standard Wizard of Oz adaptation. Not horrible, but nothing to write home about either. Unless you're a huge Wizard of Oz fan, I wouldn't say there's much of a reason to go seek this one out. Then we have possibly the most well-known Japanese adaptation, the 1986 anime, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The English dub aired in 1987, and has an entirely different soundtrack, including a new opening theme. Actually, as the anime was dubbed in many different countries, there are several different versions of this opening.
Listen! Hey, let's roots!
The anime is 52 episodes long, with 4 different arcs, each covering one book. The first arc covers the original Wonderful Wizard of Oz, going from episode 1 to episode 17. The second arc covers the second book, The Marvelous Land of Oz, going from episode 18 to episode 30. These first 2 arcs follow the original books actually quite well. Arc 3 in Book 3, Ozma of Oz, goes from episode 31 to 41, and the final arc skips ahead and covers Book 6, The Emerald City of Oz, going from episode 42 to the end, episode 52. These last arcs are definitely not as faithful as the first 2. On to the presentation. The art is pretty nice to look at in my opinion, especially the backgrounds. And voice acting is pretty solid all around, so no complaints there. In terms of music, I definitely prefer the Japanese soundtrack to the English one, though that one isn't bad either. The Japanese score is just majestic.
ねえ、かかしさん、さっきから何考えてるの？
黄色い道はエメラルドの都まで続いているということでしたね。
On to see the wizard. Dorothy's new friend Scarecrow is going with her to the Emerald City.
Boy, we've been walking and walking, Dorothy, and we're still not there.
And that's all I have to say about this one. It's pretty enjoyable. On to the next anime, The Wonderful Galaxy of Oz, otherwise known as Beisu Osu no Boken. This show aired from 1992 to 93 in Japan, and as the title implies, is a sci-fi take on The Wizard of Oz. The original Japanese release is 26 episodes long, but the English version is condensed into a movie, running for around an hour 20 minutes. And, well, it's definitely condensed. They talk to the Wizard of Oz within the first 25 minutes, and oh my god, he's a VTuber. Though the anime has a neat concept, it's a pretty rough product all around, and I personally would not recommend watching it. It deviates a lot from the original, though not in super interesting ways. Plus, the novelty of it being in space wears off pretty quickly. The English dub is especially rough, though at least that version is shorter. I don't want to spend much more time on this, so let's go on to the next one. Next we have Oz, a 1992 anime OVA based on Natsumi Itsuki's manga of the same name. The studio mainly responsible for this is Madhouse, a well-renowned animation studio known for every Satoshi Kon project, Death Note, One Punch Man Season 1, etc. They were assisted by Studio Fantasia, a studio with 136 followers on Twitter. The first thing Studio Fantasia did was produce a 15-second commercial for the Famicom game Mugen Senshi Valis, which was directed by Evangelion creator Hideaki Anno. Right after that, they produced My Neighbor Totoro. But that's just as producer. As an animation studio, they made a bunch of terrible anime, including the infamous Fire Emblem OVA, transitioned to hentai in the 2010s, and then went bankrupt. Also, Studio Ghibli worked on this project in a minor capacity, working on the in-betweens. All this to say, I have absolutely no idea what quality to expect from this OVA. Apparently, it's loosely based on The Wizard of Oz. I mean, the title is Oz. See, look, it's Dorothy. Wait, oh. Okay, we're only 20 minutes in. Well, Dorothy, no! Oh, God! Okay, actually, this character isn't named Dorothy, but rather Felicia Epstein. She's clearly based on Dorothy, though, and I think this is one of the only similarities between this and the original story. We're told she's some kind of genius, but we never see evidence of this, and she's just a really annoying teenage girl. Oh yeah, by the way, she's 16, and that guy was 22. Now it's time for me to explain the plot as fast as possible. So, Felicia's uncle dies in a plane crash, and then in the wreckage she finds a cryo capsule that contained a cybernoid called 1019 that was based on her mother. Because of this, 1019 has the thoughts of a female, even though he is actually a male. They, along with generic action hero man Muto, go on a journey to find Oz, what is said to be some kind of a futuristic utopian city. Felicia needs to go there to find her brother Leon. Along the way they run into another cybernoid, which 1019 then murders, some other characters, and eventually they make their way to Oz, which they find out is not a utopian city, but instead a military base. Also, there are 3 different cybernoids that look exactly the same, and it gets very confusing. But then the gang finds out that Leon is actually an evil dictator guy. He's a very loose interpretation of the Wizard of Oz, I think. Anyways, they shoot him, but it wasn't actually him, but a cybernoid pretending to be him. You can tell because he has white blood, the worst possible color they could have gone with. Some other dude dies immediately after from poison or something. In the very next scene, some dude named Nate died after maybe 5 minutes of screen time, being killed by his love interest cybernoid lady who also dies. Then this kid approaches Muto and shoots him. Muto asks if he's the real Leon, but then the kid gets murdered by a cybernoid, who is then shot by 1019, and then they get nuked, with only Felicia surviving. That is until 6 years later, when Muto is discovered in a cryo capsule, and everything works out. This OVA is not very good. There's not much in terms of characters, and the plot does way too much in a way too small amount of time. It feels like watching a Wikipedia synopsis. It does have some good animation in places though, so I'll give it that. Otherwise, yeah, it's not good. Maybe the manga's better? I don't know. This barely has anything to do with the original Wizard of Oz. If it wasn't called Oz, I don't think anyone would have noticed. It is completely insane and fun to make fun of though, so I do think it can be an enjoyable experience. Now let's take a detour to the internet. Here we have Keep Calm and Carry On, a nice little 1-minute animation from Space Shower TV. This animation is really nice and cool, and it's got good music. This is a neat little video that I just wanted to share. Next up, Music Wizard of Oz. This is a 20-minute musical version of The Wizard of Oz from 2014, featuring Vocaloid characters like Hatsune Miku. If you're not familiar, a Vocaloid is a character with a synthesized voice that you can make music with. Interestingly, the video has an opening text scroll in English, despite the rest of the video being in Japanese. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Dorothy. She's lost her parents, by death, when innocent infant, and gets weary of life with her aunt and uncle, too ordinary. This lovable girl is dreaming of adventure in an extraordinary wonderland. This is the Wizard of Oz, the wrong one. And that's about all I can tell you about this video, because to be honest, I have no idea what's going on for the following 20 minutes. It seems pretty cute though, so I won't complain. Now on to manga. There's 2 I want to talk about here. First, Ozono Mahotsukai by Yumiko Igarashi, who also made the Anne of Green Gables manga. The manga is only 4 chapters long, so there's not much to it. It's a pretty basic retelling, but it's also quite charming. The art style is pretty cute, and it's really just quick, lighthearted fun. It's nothing great, but again, it is an enjoyable and expeditious read. Next is Captive Hearts of Oz by Momonosuke Fujimaru and Ryo Maria. In this one, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and the Lion are all attractive anime boys. Or I guess manga boys, but that doesn't roll off the tongue as well. Anyways, this is a shoujo reverse harem, which basically means that it's a manga aimed at girls, where the protagonist is a girl surrounded by several love interests. Despite myself being the complete opposite of the target demographic, this manga is actually probably my favorite thing I've come across so far. The characters are really likable, the art and character designs are pleasing to the eyes, and like the first manga, it's just really charming and fun. I might actually pick up more volumes. Finally, onto video games. The Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road is a JRPG for the DS developed by Mediavision. The main gimmick is moving by spinning this ball on the touchscreen. I'd prefer normal controls, but this is fine too, I guess. The main gameplay consists of turn-based combat, which is pretty basic, but it's alright. The gameplay is the biggest downside for me though. It's not horrible, but it can get pretty tedious. My biggest gripe is that it takes forever to find a save point. Everything else is nice though, and it's a pretty cute game. Again, I really love the art style. I don't know how to talk about art, so I won't try, but this is definitely one of my favorites. The music is pretty good too. You can even hear a bit of Over the Rainbow at the beginning of the opening theme. Overall, it's kind of a hidden gem of a game. Other notable games include Ozono Mohotsukai, Another World of Rung Rung, a PS1 JRPG based on The Wizard of Oz, and The Sword of Etheria, or Oz in Japan, a hack and slash which borrows elements from The Wizard of Oz. We also have Codename Steam, which includes Dorothy, the Aligned Scarecrow, and Tin Man. It's not an adaptation or anything though, it also has Abraham Lincoln. And that's all about The Wizard of Oz in Japan. I like learning about this kind of stuff, so it was a fun video. If you didn't have fun, unsubscribe. I will kill you. Yeah.